Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you are. As you can see, I am not the managing director of the Bank of Industry. I'm just here to represent him. Good afternoon, good evening once again. The managing director had prepared for this session. He was expecting to be here. He longed for it, but for some reasons, another assignment came calling, and he had to go for that assignment. But he sent his deepest, apology that he couldn't come here. I will try as much as possible to do justice to the assignment he has asked me to handle on his behalf. I'll be speaking on how Africa can prepare for the fourth industrial revolution through technology transformation and disruption. The fourth industrial revolution has brought new frontier technologies. We all know, we've all heard about robotics, artificial intelligence, smart sensors, and etc. It is estimated to be about 350 billion market as of today, and in another 3 to 4 years, it's expected to create additional value of about $3.2 trillion. Frontier technologies present opportunities for economies like Nigeria, or economies in Africa, who are emerging to leapfrog. And when I mean leapfrog, they don't have to go through all the phases that other advanced economies have gone through. And I will give a quick example on that. 10, 15 years ago, the payment space in Nigeria is not the way it is today. I'm sure some of us, can remember it was a bit difficult to transfer, from one bank or from one account to the other. And that was when the likes of InterSwitch and Co were just, emerging and getting into the market. But fast forward to today, Nigerian's payment space is seen as one of the most advanced. A product as, that we all take for granted, the NIPS instant payment is so revolutionary that, other advanced countries are trying to catch up. So in that space, Nigeria has leapfrogged. And so what we need to do is to identify sectors like that and see how we can, focus our attention on them and leapfrog and create, that value for Nigeria. There are challenges. We must, not be shy of that, in this whole journey of fourth industrial revolution. However, what we must do is to ensure that we understand what those challenges are and make every effort to address them. Okay, so I have just displayed here, just a picture that talks about how we've evolved, as humanity from the first industrial revolution to the second one, which dominated during just after the First World War, to the third one, which dominated, during the Cold War era up until a few years ago, and then we are fully in the fourth industrial revolution. Where we have things like, smart sensors, artificial intelligence, the cloud computing, and etc. And there are a few things that jump out, out of this, and that is, it's a fusion of technology. So it blends both the digital, both the physical, both the biosphere, aspects of data together. It is disruptive. It is not incremental. It is not transformative. It is not even revolutionary. It is disruptive. A good example is, the blockchain industry, the cryptocurrency industry today, which is gradually giving rise to the digital currency. So you can imagine, a few years, down the line, the way we know finance today is definitely not going to be the way it's going to be. You see, you see central banks issuing their own digital currency. So clearly, it is disruptive, when you look at, finance in particular. And the same goes for a lot of other sectors. it is very fast. It moves, very fast. Just to talk on one or two sectors and what is happening in that space. If you look at the health sector, for instance, the fourth industrial revolution technologies is such that it's making it a lot easier for us to collect data of our health status, analyze those data, make decisions on them, and help us to prevent or or avoid falling sick, or when there is an identification of a possibility down the road that can be quickly addressed. So basically, it makes us to be a lot more proactive in dealing with possible health challenges down the road. Those technologies will also make it a lot easier for us to scale affordable healthcare services to the emerging market. The developed economies are finding it a bit difficult, challenging to provide affordable healthcare. Talk less of countries like Nigeria. But with the application of the fourth industrial revolution technologies, the frontier technologies, that should be a lot more easier. If you look at the smart city space, Lagos has its own challenges, and that makes it imperative that we apply smart technologies to how we can make living and mobility a lot more convenient for people in those kind of environment. And the executive governor spoke earlier today about some of the things the state is doing to try and make it a lot easier for living and lifestyle in Lagos. When you look at education, a lot has happened in the last 1 year since COVID came. We've had to be forced to adopt the virtual learning platform. And what technologies like this can do is to make it such that it is not just for the business community, for the working class community, but it cuts across the entire education space. So young children in primary school, in secondary school, they begin to, the concept of virtual learning becomes the norm in our education system. When you look at agriculture and food production, the application of drones, the application of remote sensors, can help us to better, produce and better, better produce, and also help us to, to feed and to feed the growing population. When you look at energy, power generation, application of smart grids, Internet of Technology, and blockchain will help us to ensure that we generate electricity on demand. So the situation we have today, for instance, where there is a clear disparity between what we generate and what is transmitted, and also between what is transmitted and what is distributed, clearly means that there's a whole lot of wastages that is happening across the power generation value chain. Now, when you apply smart grids and blockchain, for instance, you can generate electricity closer to where it is going to be consumed. And in that case, you eliminate as much as possible wastages and inefficiency along the system. And then finally, you have smart manufacturing, which is also called additive manufacturing. That on its own will make it a lot easier for us to manufacture closer to where those goods are required. And that obviously will eliminate the constraints around the burden around logistics and the need for you to transport your goods from one location across, in order to be able to get them across to the end user. Now, clearly there is a clear case. There is a case for adoption of fourth industrial revolution technologies in Nigeria. Why? Because it is critical for our future. It is very important for our future. It also gives us an opportunity to transform from being a commodity-dependent continent to a tech-driven continent. And of course, we know that Africa's population is growing at an astronomical rate. So it's expected that this population of the continent will double, by 2050. So you can imagine the challenges that will place, the burden of governance, the burden on businesses to ensure that we provide food, to ensure that we provide jobs for this population growth that we're going to see. So another clear case for the adoption of fourth industrial revolution is the need to, it gives us an opportunity to seed entirely new industries. Because those technologies are myriad, there are quite a number of them. So the challenge is on the entrepreneurs, the innovators, to identify how they can combine those technologies together and create new industries. Maybe about 10 years ago, the blockchain was just in research. It was just a paper research. But today it has become a mainstream technology that is being applied across several sectors. So the challenge is on us to see how we can pick up those frontier technologies, those fourth industrial revolution technologies, and use them to create and seed new industries and new sectors. What are some of the trends that we see, across, Africa? I think my time is up, so I need to move very fast. Let's just look at one or two challenges. Of course, the key challenge here is the human capital challenge, which clearly shows that even though we have the population, but that population is unproductive, that population is not really adding anything to the economic landscape because it's just population, it's not human capital. There is a difference between population and human capital. So there is a lot of effort that needs to be placed or needs to be made into translating that huge population to human capital. Access to finance, that cannot be overemphasized, is very key, whether it's debt, whether it's equity. For debt, we have quite a number of banks, and Bank of Industry is also one of them. There's a lot being, but in the equity space, the infrastructure is still lacking in Nigeria and in Africa. So there's a whole lot for us to do to identify and to build that infrastructure that will help us to provide the right financial mix, particularly equity finance, to the startups that are coming up. Entrepreneurial innovation support system is also another area. It's lacking. And I will just talk for a few seconds on some of the things that the Bank of Industry is doing in this space. We've recognized that universities, they produce a lot of research. However, there's a huge gap. There's a difference between you coming up with, R&D or identifying, or coming up with an innovation and commercializing it. So a year ago, the Bank of Industry began a program with University of Lagos to try and see how we can, help shift that orientation from just being focused on R&D to, being focused on how you can take those ideas that you have developed, you have researched, and converting them into businesses that can thrive. So we're working on that program. We're also doing a similar thing with the Obafemi Awolowo University in Ile-Ife. And the plan is to see how we can do this in as many higher institutions as possible. Of course, the Bank of Industry is also playing a big role in creating technology hubs across the country. Finally, what do we do, or how do we move forward in the fourth industrial revolution? There are three stakeholders here that we've identified that need to play a major role. The regulators, and a lot has been said about regulation, earlier on. There's a need to, in our view, what we think is important is that there is a vision, there's a coordinated, there's a common position that we all agree, whether you're a regulator, whether you are from the government, whether you are from the private sector, that we want to build this economy, we want to grow this economy. We may be looking at things from different perspectives, but we all have the same objective. And that means that what we then need to do is to develop or to put in place a collaborative and an adaptive approach. Collaborative means nobody knows it all. The private sector will bring his own perspective. The government, the regulator will bring their own different perspective. And through continuous engagement, we will all align and get to a point where we will we will achieve our objective. Finally, in just 1 or 2 seconds, I will talk on 1 or 2 things that the Bank of Industry, is doing. And I think it's very important to emphasize on this. The first one is the fact that, of course, that's what is in our DNA is to provide funding to SMEs. We have established a tech fund, a $75 million tech fund, focused on helping startups, to provide equity fund for startups, and that is going to be go mainstream by January next year. We've also invested $10 million in our Lithia IDF fund, focused on helping women-led or women-owned businesses in Nigeria. We have also been working we've also set up a number of technology hubs across Nigeria. We've done 3 in Lagos, somewhere on Lekki Expressway, another 2 in Unilag, in Kano, in Kaduna, in Kebbi, in Bayelsa. And the whole idea is, how, create those platforms so that ecosystem can expand. Now, one of the things we are also going to be doing the following year is to see how we can work with existing hubs, because some of them are doing well, but there's an opportunity to scale. So the Bank of Industry will be looking at how we can work with them to scale and to ensure that as much as possible, idea owners, entrepreneurs are able to, join a community, have access to funding and scale up their businesses. Finally, we have also, been supporting on the infrastructure side. We supported MA1 extensively and will continue to do that. And it's also important to also emphasize that, our support in the area of Technology Hub is not just in putting the infrastructure in place, but it's also supporting the programs that are run on them, because that is very critical. So we're talking about capacity building, we're talking about incubation, acceleration, market linkages, and etc. And of course, the area of funding. Thank you very much, and have a good evening.